Hi, everybody. This is Robert Welch and Scott Brogan. This is going to be a little different from what we've done in the past. Hopefully, different is good for those of you that have seen me or seen the presentation before. So I asked Scott to co-present with me today, and hopefully he's going to have a little fun. Feel free to ask questions, kibitz, make fun of us. We're here to have a little fun, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? About Dawes, anyway. It's really having fun. So it's Scott Brogan.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking.
That's right. So I'll be doing some talking, and Scott will be doing some talking, and we'll see if we have any brains left over, or if you're smarter than we are throughout this thing. Okay. So caution.
You cursed brat!
Yes, I'm sorry. We're going to share some behind the scenes. We're going to share some funky things that you may not have considered or seen before, or maybe you have and you know everything, which is fine. So
all in good time.
Yes.
We've
got about an hour here, maybe a little less than that, so we can make some transitions here. But we're going to go do this, and we're going to allow you to have questions and interact with this. So we're going to take you back. By the way, those that don't know, the original title shot was the crystal ball. And what we did was we took and we put liquid in it. It's just kind of a milky liquid, if you will, like flour actually, and mix that all up. And then we dropped it from the top of the berms. And so this is taking you back to the 1930s, if you will, when everything was not CGI, computer graphics. This was more along things that were practical. Practical means you can touch it, you can feel it. Everything's kind of in camera, or it's processed afterwards. And you can see some of the directors here, like Barker and Bell and Wild Bill Wellman, who actually worked on the 1959 Ben-Hur, but other people like King Vidor. And so some people might know that King Vidor came in and finished off part of Wizard of Oz. If you don't know, this is the type of stuff we're going to get into, which is kind of cool. So we're going to kick this over to the lovely, talented, amazing...
My, people come and go so quickly.
That's right. We're going to kick it off, and we're going to kick it over to Mr. Scott Brogan real quick. By the way, just by introduction, I'll introduce him a bit. He is the Judy Room guy. So if you don't know who the Judy Room guy is, this is Scott. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, flip it over to Scott, and allow him to elucidate.
All right, here we go. We're going to test this out. There we go. Can everybody see that? Is that good? Great. Okay. Thank you again so much, Robert and Colin and Eric and everyone else for having me. This is, just so you know, this is my first time giving this presentation. So if I stumble a little bit or whatever, just laugh and give me a hard time and everything and make me laugh and it'll all be better. So I thought it would be fun, since Robert's presentation is about the behind the scenes and the special effects and everything. I thought it would be really, really great to focus on what we call the Thorpe era of filming, which I'm sure a lot of people know about that, which is the first few weeks of filming with Richard Thorpe as director. And that was with, of course, the blonde Dorothy, the infamous Lolita Gale of Kansas, as people like to call her. Judy Garland was originally dolled up as a blonde. And so here's a picture on the right of her on the cornfield set from the first days of filming in October 1938. And if you look behind her, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but if you look behind her, you'll notice that the yellow bricks are different than they are in the actual film. Now, this photo on the left is one of just a couple of actual true color photos, not like later colorized by Photoshop photos, of her in her blonde wig. And it's obviously taken towards the end of these first few weeks in October when they were filming before George Cukor came aboard and changed the entire look of everything. But what's interesting is not only that she's posing with the Munchkins for the test of their costumes, but that at this point, even in late October, the Munchkins were already at MGM and they were already getting geared up, even though they wouldn't start filming any of that until mid-December. So this is, of course, there's tons and tons and tons of costume test photos of Judy as a blonde, as a brunette, as a redhead, as everything under the sun. But these two are some of my favorites because I really think that she looks like Alice in Wonderland more than Dorothy Gale, I think. And she looks like she'd be more at home at Buckingham Palace having tea than she would on a farm in Kansas. You know, I mean, she's so dolled up. I find it really amusing that she's supposed to be Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and yet they seem to have this Alice in Wonderland thing going there for a little while. So here we are. Now here is, I don't know if anybody saw this a few years ago, but Liza Minnelli had a big auction of all of her stuff. And one of the items was the blonde wig from these early days of filming that someone had given to her. They didn't provide a backstory on who gave it to her or when, But it's the same wig that you see on the right-hand side. And on the right-hand side, this is how she looked again during those initial days of filming. But I thought it would be kind of fun to show that wig because it's, of all the things to survive from the film, we have one of the wigs that she didn't wear in the movie. So now we come to another photo that I think is interesting because, of course, it's Mickey Rooney and it's Mickey and Judy with Toto. And what's interesting is MGM sent this photo of the two out to the Los Angeles Times, which, as you know, they received it on November 8th, which is after Richard Thorpe had left the project, but before Cukor had made all of his changes, and yet they still sent it out. But the paper never printed it that we know of. I've looked through the archives and all that stuff, but on the back, I'm going to read this to you because on the back of the photo is the printed text that they send out that they want the newspapers to print. So here we go. It's dog actor found for wizard role. After a search that covered all parts of the country, the testing of hundreds of dog actors and receipt by Mervyn LeRoy, the producer, of letters and pictures from every city in the United States, the role of Toto, the dog of Dorothy, played by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, was filled by Terry, a small Cairn Terrier discovered in the San Fernando Valley. Her owner, Carl Spitz, trained the animal in all of the tricks described in L. Frank Baum's book. Before submitting her to the producer, Terry is now Miss Garland's constant companion. Mickey Rooney looks on. So even this early, they were already spinning some of these like little like sort of, I call them like white lies that they used to put out there. You know, I'm sure Terry wasn't schooled or trained, I should say, in all of the tricks in Baum's book. But you know, we've already got a little bit of mythology going on there, but I just thought that was really cute. And of course it's Mickey and Judy, and you know, everybody loves Mickey and Judy. Now here we are on the first few days of filming. We're on the cornfield set. I always call it the Scarecrow set. It's really the cornfield set. Now, again, here's the bricks. Now, if you notice at the very bottom of that photo on the left, how the bricks come into a circle in the middle there, which I think is really neat because in the final film, when it's the regular square bricks, they all just kind of come to sort of a blur in the middle. And I think that that's really neat that it just kind of spoked out like that. But of course, after they changed from the blonde Dorothy and all of that, they also changed the bricks. Now on the right-hand side, I'm going to play a quick little video for you. Now this is some of the only known footage of Judy Garland in her blonde wig, blonde Dorothy outfit. The first part is some home movie footage that someone took of her on the lot at MGM where they're all going to go see something, even though we don't know what it is that they're all looking at. And then
I think it's the dead Munchkin. I'm just saying, I think it's the dead Munchkin.
It could be. They found him hanging behind the Tin Man shack. And then there's a clip from, what is it? Romance of Celluloid, an MGM short at the time that was talking. And there's a really short clip of them getting ready to film on the Tin Man, or the Scarecrow set, sorry. So now I slow it down here a little bit so you can see her. She's like, curtsy, there we go. And now we have the
First we visit
short.
the Land of Oz, and because The Wizard of Oz is being filmed entirely in Technicolor, actually billions of candle power are being poured onto this set, enough to light a fair-sized city. The setting is the cornfield. Far below, you see the cameraman about to photograph a scene with Judy Garland, who plays Dorothy, the little sweetheart of Oz.
Now here I have it slowed. That's it from the short. So now I have it slowed down so we can see. Now you can see, I freeze frame it here so you can see the bricks again in that big circle, which I think is really cool. But I think that the reason they went to the regular, like you see behind Robert actually in his screen right now, I think they were just a little too ornate. I think it was just a little too much, like too fairy tale-ish, you know, just too much on the senses, I think possibly, especially since she was so dolled up as well. And of course, you know, you have the carpet there because of course they didn't want the noises on the plywood on the floor, and also to scuff up the bricks for shots that didn't include the actual ground. And there we go. So I just love that footage because that's it. That's all. Now this is the second of the two photos that are in true color. Like I said, not the colorized photos of the filming on the cornfield set. And it was taken either on October 13th or 14th because they were only on the cornfield set for a few days, really. They got it all filmed and then they moved on. And so they moved on to the Witch's Castle sets, which are just absolutely fabulous. And here we have Margaret.
Good. Hey, Scott, can you go back to the prior photo? Because, I mean, she's not really a blonde. She's more of like a strawberry blonde.
Yeah, that's true. People tend to think that the blonde wig, especially in some of the black and white photos, it looks more platinum. I think they think sort of a Jean Harlow kind of thing going on there, but she's really got kind of sort of a honey look. And she
like the wig was showing.
Yeah. She is quite pretty, I think. So it's not an issue of her being pretty or anything. I think it's just, it just wasn't right for the character. So now we have, of course, this fantastic throne room set, or the witch's dais.
Yep.
Dais.
Witch's dais. Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice that Margaret Hamilton is sporting a different look as well. Her nose is different and her hair is long coming down. Now, Robert, is there anything you wanted to point out about this set?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, first off, Margaret Hamilton looks like this is take number 412. And I'm acting a little bit, but Judy's in there getting into it. And, so we've got all that going on. And then you've also have, other things like in the set itself, they wanted to make it look like it was more ornate. So they put the lights on and lattice underneath it to give it that abstract area. And then there's a thing called a dead door. And if you think about where that window is that she's looking out when you see the flying monkeys, why would there be a door on the wall to exit? And so that's just to add more feel to the room. And also you can see on the bottom there, just around where Dorothy's standing, there's a zodiac. So around the throne is a whole zodiac. So she was also into astrology as well, the witch was. So interesting things just about set decoration. They're all here. And we also see just in the back there, you see the cup. Apparently she got hold of the Holy Grail too, apparently. Swords. Anyway, Scott.
I always say Indiana Jones was looking in the wrong spot for that Holy Grail. But if you notice also really quick, the ruby slippers she's wearing are actually also different than what you see in the final film. They're missing the bow on the toe of the shoe, because they had a more plain look. They had that famous Arabian test pair that Debbie Reynolds auctioned off back in 2011, I think it was. But these were just a little, it's interesting. She was all dolled up, but the shoes were more plain. So I think they kind of went the other way around. So now here we have just a little more detail on Margaret Hamilton's makeup and hair as well. And then of course it's Judy, and then of course the crystal ball effect, which Robert's going to get into a little later. Here's one of my favorite photos. I put this here to point out that before they changed Margaret Hamilton, this look is good, but it's all just kind of a blend of just dark and black and everything. Later, you'll see in a picture in a few more slides, when they pulled her hair back, it made her much more severe, but it also brought out more of her neck and face. So that added a much better contrast than just this kind of just a whole bunch of just the one muted color like that.
Yeah, the other interesting thing is, as you progress through these photos, is the nose gets more and more hooked. Here, it's not as hooked.
Right, yeah, I'll go back. Yeah, it's not. She's got a bit of a different ridge, it looks like here. But yeah, there's a progression. And that's what's so wonderful about the Thorpe era, is that I think if we didn't have that Thorpe era, I think that the movie might have turned out a lot different, because they really had a lot of trial and error for several weeks. I mean, it cost a lot of money, but so now we have October 21st, 1938 is when they were filming the escape scenes. And what's interesting, well, you can see her ruby slippers don't have the bow again, but what's interesting, I'm going to go forward and back here really quick. So you see they keep them in the Winky costumes throughout the scene, even when they get to the door. But I think that the photo here on the left is probably one of the very last ones done with Buddy Ebsen as the Tin Man, because it was right after they filmed these scenes that he got sick, and that's what halted the production, like completely shut it down. But now they're not in the Winky costumes. So I wonder if they either filmed it with wearing the Winky costumes throughout the whole thing, or uniforms, I should say, throughout the whole thing, or if they turned around and said, okay, we did that, but now we have no place for them to get out of those costumes at some point when they get chased around the castle and everything. So let's go back and refilm it and do it in the same way that they have it done in the movie that we see now. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. If you can go back one slide, there's something interesting right here is, you know, if you, and I think it's one more slide from, no, go forward one slide, I think it is. Yeah, that one right there. You know, the character on the left almost looks like a rock star, like he got the protruding lips there. Sorry, it looks like he's just ready to, you know, give that little sensual kiss to the camera. It's just funny, you know.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this photo on the left is this is another one, just like the first one that I showed at the very beginning of the presentation. MGM would send these out as 8x10 glossies and things to various newspapers and things without any explanation as to the difference in look. I mean, you could tell that her hair is different there and everything, but yet people didn't understand, people didn't realize, like when I was a little kid in the 60s, I had no idea, and I would see these and I would think, but what's that from? I don't remember that scene, or I don't remember her looking like that. And it wasn't until the 70s when people started writing the books and the, you know, documentaries finally started coming out and said, oh, I see, that's what that was. So,
and you can see the makeup for here, the Scarecrow is evolving too, and you can see where it has a lot more like ridges in it.
So now George Cukor took over on October 26th, and I did want to talk really quick about. We were kind of laughing about this because they spent several weeks and of course all this money for months and months ahead of time, and I always wondered who was the person that had to make that walk to LB Mayer's office and say, look, we got to start all over again. We just spent $1 gazillion on this movie, on all these costumes and makeup and people and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, nobody wants to go to the boss with that kind of information, you know, and that kind of an ask. And I always just kind of wonder, was it Mervyn LeRoy who did it? Was it Arthur Freed? Was it Richard Thorpe, the director? Did he go and say, oh, I can't do it. I'm just not the right guy. I just kind of always wondered who made that walk to Mayer's office to say, we need more money and we need more time, please give it to us. I mean, at that point, they had invested so much in it, I can't imagine that they would have just shut it down completely and just not done anything. But still, I wouldn't want to be the guy who has to go to the boss with that kind of information.
Yeah, and then just the overtime just to catch up. And there must have just been this is the time where they were full production.
And it was, a pretty fast turnaround. George Cukor, like I said, came in on October 26th. Now, he didn't have any intention of directing the actual film. He came in just to help out. And he is the one that made all of the big changes, including, of course, putting Dorothy, you know, making Judy look more like Judy. But here we have one of the Cukor tests of Ray Bolger on the left. And then we have some screenshot from Harold Arlen's home movies, which were done, of course, after filming had started again. So here's our original 3 with Buddy Ebsen in the middle. And then here's how they looked in the actual film. So not a lot of difference in respect to their makeups. Of course, Jack Haley benefited from all of the guinea pig stuff that poor Buddy Ebsen had to go through. So here we have on October 26th, Judy sat for all of these different hair and makeup tests with George Cukor. And I mean, considering that they were at an interim and they were probably under the gun thinking, we got to get this project going again, you know, or else we're going to start losing money. They really took their time on getting just the right look for her, because they had every single style under the sun. And I want to point out, I'll let Robert point out his favorite, but my favorite is at the bottom left.
The upper right, sexy Bride of Frankenstein one. I mean, she just needs like stripes of blonde in there and she's got it.
She looks like she's more at home on the moors in England, you know, with Heathcliff. And but I do get a kick out of the one at the bottom left, because it's that weird, like looped, braided thing. And I thought, who would wear, I mean, I would think you would get it caught in things, or, you know, mean, nasty kids would pull your hair. I mean, it just, they tried everything. They really did.
She was milking cows and things, and who knows what else. She was on the farm, right? So
now we go. Now this is all one day, which is interesting, because on the far left, she's wearing the dress that she wore at the beginning of filming with the blonde wig and everything. But she has stockings on this time. And we don't know if they were meant to be, maybe they were thinking of putting her in stockings. But now if you notice her ruby slippers, the one on her right foot is one of the Arabian, the more ornate Arabian test pairs. And then the one on the left is the one that she had been wearing during filming without the bow. So they were even still tinkering with the ruby slippers, even at this point. So then the middle photo is, they said, okay, well, that looks really good, but now let's try this different blouse, which is the same blouse that she wears in the film, but let's put an apron on her. Now she's wearing the dress on the left, but a different blouse, and they put the apron on with those pockets, which of course, I would think would be very distracting. I think if you were in the middle of filming, I would think that she would be sticking her hands in all the time. So, and then now here on the right, we finally see basically how she looks in the film. The hair is a little longer than most of the scenes, as we know they changed lengths in some of them. But this is the final Dorothy look. So just in one day, we get this progression, which I think is neat. All right, why is this not? There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to go through these fairly quickly. Here we have Margaret's final look on the left with the hair pulled back. Much better, much more severe looking. Her nose is a little more hooked. Her chin is pointing out. They gave her more of a chin. And the screenshots on the right. I love this because it shows Margaret Hamilton's humor, because everyone talked about what a wonderful person she was and how gracious she was. And she was just the complete opposite of a wicked witch, you know, and so I just like having that in there just to show her humor coming out. And also that's some test footage from, well, actually this is the Harold Arlen's home movies, but obviously before they changed her. But anyway, you can see the difference in just that little bit pulling her hair back, and everything just made all the difference in the world. So now we have Ray Bolger. And on the right is a screenshot from some test footage where you can see that they used straw for eyebrows instead of just sort of painting them on as they are in the actual film. Just little things like that. They were so detailed, and so the attention to detail is just amazing. And they were constantly tinkering with things because they just had to get it just right. So now we have, oops, wrong one. Here we have Jack Haley. Now, of course, Jack Haley, like I said, didn't have to go through all the stuff that Buddy Ebsen had to go through. But here are this photo on the right, which was taken on November 5th. Of course, he looks thrilled. I'm sure he's just so tired and bored because it just took forever with these things just to get the makeup on. I mean, every day they had to have that put on and then taken off in the evening. But if you notice his skin on his actual face looks different than the picture on the left. And I think that they were trying out maybe a more natural skin look there, even though it's silver or gray, I should say. But he's a little shinier on the left, but that could be after the wash and brush up company. So I don't know. I'd speculate on that one. Now we have, of course, good old Bert Lahr, and it's another screenshot of test footage on the right with his little bow in the hair. And on the left, of course, there he is in one of the publicity photos. And, you know, his look didn't really change too much between the Thorpe footage or the Thorpe era and then when Victor Fleming took over and directed most of the film. And here we have, finally, here's Judy Garland as Dorothy on the left as she looks in the film. Now, when they started filming again, they started again on the cornfield set. And in that, just that short little, like, I think it was about a week or so, they changed all the bricks, and they put sidings on the road instead of just having the dirt come out. They put borders, and then of course on the right is some more of that earlier footage in the Witch's throne room, and I just like that because it's a really good picture of both her and Margaret, and you can see just they had to do all of those emotions and filming all over again. So finally we get to the beginning and the end. The very, very first known test that Judy Garland did as Dorothy were in April of 1938. And you could see they were testing a hair, blondish again. They were still trying to go for that pseudo Shirley Temple, Alice in Wonderland thing. And then of course at the bottom, that's the Dorothy we all know and love. And that's a photo taken, of course, as it says there, November 3rd, 1938. And so that's the beginning and the end right there. And here's our final four as they look in the movie, finally, after all of that drama and going to Mr. Mayor and changing everything. And George Cukor saying, I don't want to direct the film, but I'll give you my input anyway. And there we are.
That's fascinating. Gosh, I love that. So we're going to jump over to, by the way, Scott, that is phenomenal work. The Judy Room, it's just a treasure trove of information, all things Judy, including The Wizard of Oz, and this wonderful, very detailed interactive map of where the different films were made from Judy Garland. So he has an IT side to him too. So he's very, very smart. And I thank you for all the work that you've done, because I certainly have benefited from myself. So with that,
that's why that's why I had problems hooking up, because I work in tech. Never fails.
Yeah, the most techie guy has problems.
I know,
okay, yeah. I'll save that. It's on. Hey, it's been recorded. So
true. I know.
So we're going to jump over to the art studios and some of the behind the scenes on special effects. And hopefully this is interesting to you. This is my grandfather on the right-hand side. This is actually for Green Dolphin Street, where we have one of the Oscars here. The head of the Matt department is Warren Newcomb. This is him. So this is A. Arnold Gillespie, or Buddy, as we used to call him. We used to call him Papu, but that was the family name. And this is Cedric Gibbons. He was in charge of both the matte painting and the special effects. And we'll get into what special effects and matte painting is in a little bit of detail here. So hopefully this will be kind of fun too. So
let's get out of here. Look, Emerald City is closer and prettier than ever.
Yes, we only have 30 minutes to go, people. So stick with us, and hopefully we'll have a little fun. So this is what we call an establishing shot, in which you're watching a movie or some type of show. They'll show like LA or a drone shot or something like that. So this is a painting, and this was used as an establishing shot. But there's a lot of matte paintings that were developed, well over 300 for Wizard of Oz. Again, all the detail that was there was a lot in matte painting, as well as the sets and the set design to extract you and put you into this land of Oz. As you can see here, some of the interoffice memos of all the matte paintings they did. They have to account for what was done, what the new shots were, the color, the reference colors, all that was very, very detailed and thought out. Everything was well thought out, detailed in terms of even looking at like CAD drawings of where things would be. So this is an example of taking the live action and what you saw as the final print, and then what a matte painting would be and how you match those together. And the artistry of a matte painting is to take the actual stills from the movie, copy those, and then paint them as quickly as possible and as accurate as possible, so you don't see those blend lines. And there's hundreds and hundreds of examples of this, not only here and on Scott's site, but also in the 75th anniversary. We worked on some behind the scenes for that. So here you can see the live action and the matte painting, and where they call that matte line is. And you want to make it really kind of fuzzy when you're doing the matte painting, so it blends together. So the color has to be very accurate. The lighting has to be very accurate, and also the depth of this. So they worked a lot with exactly what the camera angles would be, and then the matte artist worked with that angle to develop the print. Here's another shot where you see the production happening and how they extended out the set into the matte painting. So that's typically what a matte painting does, is it extends out the set or a piece of live action into the unreality of the matte painting. Again, there's just example after example after example, and I'll show you something in a little bit more detail about how to think critically every time you see now one of these. Okay, here's one that happens to be EXT being the exterior. Here's the matte line. If you've seen some of the photos of the Wizard of Oz and Emerald City, you know that this area had a top to it, like on the upper left. And those of you that are collecting photos, you've always seen this, and you're like, okay, where is the top and bottom? Where's the practical set, as we called it, and where does that matte line exist? And then also from the colorization perspective, was there a question? Nope, no question. Okay. So this happens to be the exit. This was a practical piece. It was on a crane. So the balloon was a matte painting, and I'll show you a little bit more of that. But the actual basket itself was a practical thing on a crane. It was just lifted up. Now we're going to show you some really smart things.
Do you know any?
I think I'll make some stuff up if I don't know any. So here again, I just want to show you from a video perspective where that matte line is, but also to take you and not only where Glinda's coming in with the magic bubble or the magic orb, but also show you from the exit as well, and putting those two together and superimposing them. Watch the people in the bottom, all the extras here, basically the people of Oz. They are cheering at the same time. It's the same setup, just with or without the basket. And so we added the bubble and the State Fair here. Oh, by the way, the State Fair balloon does move. It's just ever so slight. And I'll speed this up so you can see it tilt back and forth. That was on something called a glass mat. So they had the mat, and then they had a glass mat in front of it. to do that. Now, here's the matte line for Glinda's bubble coming in, the magic orb. And you can see the people that are reacting to it, and it's great. Now, what we'll do next, though, is we'll take and put in here, and I'll speed this up, by the way. If you look right in here, notice this area gets lit up. And you don't notice that normally in the movie, but when you speed it up, you see those things, and also some shimmering going on. Now, I'll superimpose these together again, just to give a contrast of what the setup was, same scene. And then what I'll do is I'll add in and speed it up so you can see kind of the twinkling and all this other stuff, which is done by lights in the back. Now, what I'll do is I'll take Glinda's and I'll just add in. Now, at this point, the wizard has already left. And what I want you to do is think of this as we actually tried this in a practical sense to recreate this. And this was really hard to do. And in some cases, the magic orb had some issues. It wasn't always successful in doing this magic orb flight. We were trying to fly it around. So in this particular take here, watch the orb very carefully. This is a little flub. Oh, so sometimes it's fatal. Yeah, now
I've been drinking again.
It's been drinking. Yes, exactly. So don't drink and bubble at the same time. So a little bit of fun there, right? Hopefully this is fun for you.
Lions and tigers and
That's
bears.
right. Let's go into the
my.
lion's forest. And now this happens to be an architectural rendering of what that lion's forest is. And if you have really good eyes, or you can blow this up, you'll see that this backing, what we call the backing, is from a prior movie. In fact, it's come from Sweethearts, MGM Production 1055. And you'll see that right here. So you reuse a lot of set pieces a lot, as you saw in the prior ones, where basically the Witch's Dais, they use props all the time and they try to reuse those things. The other thing to note is there's a hole right here. It's a trampoline. It's a glorified trampoline, but they needed to actually build that into the set. So this area here, to build this out, could be flat on the edges, and then it had to be raised in the middle so we can get a hole right in here. And you also notice the famous tree here, the fallen tree that the lion jumps off of. And again, this was set in this is basically set number such and such on stage number 26. So there's a lot of interesting things here as well, like where the cameras are. And cameras are typically like this A and B setup, where you're looking back this way or this way. You want to figure out exactly where that camera was going to be so you could figure out the entire shot. If you didn't figure that out beforehand, you might build a set differently. And again, this is from Scott's The Judy Room. Here's another behind the scenes. Is the Haunted Forest is just a retake on the Lion's Forest. It's pretty much the same set with some set pieces taken off. And in fact, the same rocks that were used in the Lion's Forest and the Haunted Forest were used in, of all places, the cornfield and also the Tin Man set. The same rocks were used all over the place. Now, why there's rocks or a hillside in the cornfield, I don't know, but that's what they did to actually add a little bit more sense of depth. And when you're doing a set design, you want to have a front, basically a middle, and an end, basically the backing being the end. So you want that sense of threes. Whenever you do in set design, you're working in sets of threes, and these rocks gave us a nice sense of depth to it.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
And these are things you can figure out on your own. So I'm just going to tell you as it is, and hopefully this is fun. So this is the stand-in for Bert Lahr. We have basically the trampoline here. I want you to pay attention to this area that just came out of view right there and right here. So right here is a cue light or a mirror so that the actor knew exactly where that trampoline was. So he jumped on exactly the trampoline. So that's one thing to note. The other thing to note in this is watch the scarecrow dance. So pay attention here and notice that's the same dance as used in the cornfield scene. So this is more about continuity of character and how they reacted even in the Lion's Forest set. And they're all reacting here. Remember, they're all dancers. So this is kind of fun just to watch and see all the details here. Well, maybe just for me. Let's get back to the matte paintings, and I'll share with you something interesting here. In this scene where they're exiting the Lion's Forest, the troop has now picked up the lion, and they're off to the Wizard of Oz. There's a matte line right here.
Put him up. Put him up.
No, I'm not going to share any silliness about the lion here. So good. He's a good guy and he's going along with the troop. But here's the scene as we all know it. We've seen it a couple of times. Look for the matte line, and that matte line is right there. Here's the matte painting, a little grainy. Here's the matte line. And so the lion itself was articulated. Here's the actual set. So there was really not much on the right-hand side, the practical set on the right-hand side. But pay attention to this area right here. Remember, the lion's tail was articulated. It was articulated with a fishing pole and two wires on it. Well, let me kind of zoom in on that a bit and take a look at right at that matte line right there. Notice how on the practical trees that the wires got caught right there. So this is something you won't necessarily see unless you really analyze what's going on in the set. So again, here's the matte line. There's nothing really to the right-hand side. This is all a matte painting, and that's a backing on the back side there, just to make it all continuous. And then we actually added the left-hand side and those famous rocks that we now know are the same ones as all the other scenes. And then you could see the hooking of the wires from the lion. Kind of interesting to me, the details that went into this, but also some of the little cookies or little flubs that are in there now. You can't unsee these things.
I would like to point something out on that set is if you go back, where the characters are, the backing on the live set, how great they were at matching it up or matching the matte painting to that backdrop, because they're two completely different things painted by two different people. You would never know that they were two separate paintings.
That's the artistry. There was only a few good matte painters, and still only exist a few good matte painters to make all this happen. Now, today what we do to make this happen is we have some practical set on there, and everything's CGI, so everything's going to be mixed anyway. So we'll have a green screen or a blue screen and some dots on there. And this is the days of actual set design and direction and true artistry, by the way, in my personal opinion. Now, I was bidding on these at Profiles in History, but they wanted like $2,000 per photo. And I said, no, that's too expensive. I mean, maybe for some of you here, but this happens to be Jackie Ackerland. He texted me back when I was asking people, I asked the Westmores if they knew, actually the Westmores, if you know that they did makeup, who did it. And so you see the stagehand up here, up in the berms. And then you had some guy, Jackie in this case, who was articulating. And this is a fishing pole. This is just a glorified fishing pole with two lines on it just to articulate the lion's tail. Wow, very high tech, but that's what they did. So here's another thing. So now the lion's tail was just part of the whole scene here. I mean, it was almost its own character. So you've got the person up there and moving things around. And remember, just like before, you've got the practical set. Okay, so now you've got, well, it's in the way. So we have to push that out of the way. And so this is something you'll see in the scene now as they play this out, is you have the characters, they know exactly where the wires are, don't want to trip on the wires, don't want to get caught on the wires. So we'll just push it out of the way to make sure that we can get to the lion. So interesting thing is if you watch the little details in this. Yeah. So back to the witch's dais.
I love this.
So here we can see the zodiac around the chair. And the chair was actually kind of cushy. They started off with red, and then they actually went to a black to kind of make it a little bit more muted. And you'll see all the different camera angles that are associated with this. Camera angle is going to be this way to see the outside, if you will, and coming in through that kind of a dead door. Wild unit means it's a floating wall. I can take it away. So I can take that away when I'm shooting. The process screen was used for the projection of the flying monkeys, okay? And then you have here the other wall, which is basically the fake painted wall, the backing wall. So they could move this away, do the rear projection for the flying monkeys. Now notice the elevation is 0 feet, 0 inches. This was all painted directly on the floor. And if you've seen these photos before, you'll see that the elevation is 0 on these. So they had to figure out from a practical perspective how to project into the crystal ball. By the way, pardon me, is Betty Danko was supposed to, in this scene, transitioning from the dais to the flying monkeys and then flying out, as well as another scene where she flies out of the witch's castle, is Betty was rigged with wires. And for those of you who collect photos, you've probably seen this one. So in this scene, Betty was rigged with wires and hovering out, and she was going to fly out the dais area. That was cut, wasn't used. They wanted Margaret Hamilton to do this, and she said, pretty much, are you kidding? After all I've gone through, I don't think so. So this is one of those ones that got cut, and you could see the stagehand here trying to be very careful, and they wore kind of a harness of sorts, so they could basically, Betty was going to hover and then fly out. But they cut that, and Margaret wasn't really amiable to do that anyway. So another interesting thing is the witch's crystal ball. Again, back to the props being used more over and over. So just a few months beforehand was basically Boris Karloff's famous The Mask of Fu Manchu. And so this is, by the way, this is now is preserved in the history of human imagination in Stamford, Connecticut. This is known, this has been in there, and it was actually in storage for the longest time. Now, how they did this setup of projecting into the crystal ball is what I'll go into. This is one of the more elaborate setups that they had to do. So a process shot is rear projection. Okay, so you're presenting on a screen, you're projecting on a screen, and the arc light on that was very, very hot. And it was actually a flame. So they couldn't actually take the camera and tilt it on its side because a flame would go up. They couldn't project from the bottom nor the top from the process perspective because a flame wouldn't work. So what they did is they projected from the side. And inside the crystal ball is a film, a filament, if you will, to project out or reflect out what was being projected to it. On the left-hand side, don't tell anybody, yes, it's being recorded. These are Al Jean Harmut's original notes from the interview with my grandfather, and it details out exactly what I just told you. Now, how this works is just like a mirror. You project into it, and it's 180 degrees flipped, as you know, just like a regular mirror, but you have this angle of incidence and angle response. Now, if you want to do this, or if you've been to a haunted house and you see the crystal ball, this is how they did it today, which is you take like an iPad, you stick it on the bottom, you have a mirror here, and you project out. And it's very, very simple today, but this is very similar to what was done in the crystal ball. In fact, you'll see here where the director is getting out of the room, and you can see just his arm. But if you notice here real close, and if you're really good with your eyes, this is the scene set up for the poppy field scene. Now, I was going to blow this up for you, but when we get together live, you'll see more of this. So this is the setup as the process projector is projecting into this for that setup. And here you could just see a little bit more of that, of the poppy field setup, okay? Now, this is a great photo, and if you're looking for it, I mean, here's the backing, the hard backing, the painted backing, okay? And you can see the top of the area here, and this had to be open so they could fly out Betty Danko. But right here, you can kind of see the film right there in the middle of the crystal ball. And again, it's at a 45-degree angle because you're projecting into it, and then it has to reflect back. Okay, so, and right here is part of the process projector. This is, again, that very, very large projector with the lenses to get it down to a very small size. So that's all that, and that's really great. So let me show you another one here, just because we only have about 15 minutes left is, here's what's called a Form 48. My grandfather always detailed every special effect he worked on. And this one happened to be on April 11th, the special effect, the cost of it. And the cost of it wasn't that much, but this right here, people constantly ask me is, well, how big was this? This is about a good 20 feet tall. The witch flying was about 17 inches. And there was a debate about whether this was a practical set, but really this was made of cardboard. It was just a flat piece of wood. That's all it was. And they painted on top of it, and then they flew out from here. Just right here is what you saw was basically the miniature witch. And so I think that that's very interesting for me, because you can get away with just painted cardboard and it looks like it's three-dimensional. In the back area, what they did is they cut this out so you could see that there was a little light there. And they'll constantly do this with matte paintings and practical effects. They'll cut out areas just to make it look like it's really kind of interesting and sense of depth. Now, another trick, which I don't have time to get into, is this backing right here. If you remember when the Wicked Witch goes and does her skywriting, surrender or die, Dorothy, WWW, which is how they wrote it. This is the backing used for that Milky scene with the stylus. So look for that in the next time you watch the movie. Now, we'll jump a little bit. I know we're jumping around.
It's a twister.
Yeah, it's a twister. It's not a tornado. So I've been corrected. It's a twister. It's not a tornado. Okay. So this happens to be a miniature set, obviously. But what's interesting about this is, because you want to have a sense of depth to this is only about 40 feet long, is these cornrows. Now, by the way, we've all been in second grade. And remember when we did art first and we did horizon point and horizon line? And you drew the horizon toward the horizon point, and you had a horizon. That's how these were hoed, to give it a bigger sense of depth. They did a miniature, but they give that sense of the line aspect to make this look like it's a much bigger environment. And right here is that road where Mrs. Gulch comes down. So everything's in miniature. They matched this up perfectly with the practical. They measured it out and they just reduced it down. So I want to give you a sense of how these miniatures were used as a process shot. And a process shot, remember, is rear projection. In this particular scene, I'm going to compare the front and back scenes. This is the actual footage used, and you can get this from behind the scenes. We had it in our archives. This is the behind the scenes projection shot of the process shot. Now, of course, the tornado, and it twists back and forth. Let me take and move that to the upper right, because I'm gonna synchronize two different scenes as Dorothy enters the farmhouse and exits the farmhouse. So this is synchronizing those two. Now notice as she exits and enters, it's the same process shot in the back. And they wanted to do that because there was only so much footage to be able to be used in this. But they also wanted to get that sense that, you know, you've kind of seen this and you know that it's coming, in that sense of reality. Right here are shadows of the what's on set, as well as the miniature chicken coops. So they went to the great pains of, remember the tree that was on the back of the farmhouse where Dorothy is trying to kick in the root cellar? That articulated tree shadow was in the miniature as well. That's how much detail they went into. Now, the other thing I want to show you is, remember that sense of three. So this is our miniature. We have a process shot that we made out of this with the tornado. Well, let's figure out how they did that when Dorothy was coming home. Again, this was reused also when Dorothy was coming home. So let's put our set here in front of it. We've got a hoe here, and that doesn't really look so good. So we'll put a tumbleweed in front of it, and we'll put that set piece in front of it. Again, this is all practical set. And then we'll add Dorothy to it as she's coming home. And this was a very quick scene. I'm going to show you how this was done. This is in the 75th anniversary. A buddy of mine, Craig Barron, who ran Matt World Digital, came up with this and came up with all these behind the scenes. I'll show a piece of this so we don't get in trouble with Warner Brothers. This obviously is in the movie. But now I want to show you how this was all done. So you have the raised stage. You had the process shot, and you had the camera that aligned all this. And this is exactly how things were done process shot wise. You had the process projector in the back, which projected onto a screen, and then it was well lit, and then you light the stage, and that's how that all works. So again, movie magic. And again, I don't want to show too much because we will get in trouble, copyright trouble. Anyway, so moving forward, their tornado. When I was talking to several people that are in the effects business, there's one awesome special effects artist out of Prague, and she also teaches. And in one of her teachings, she was teaching about Wizard of Oz, and the student came up with this. I didn't, but the student came up with this. I thought that was a wonderful example of how this whole came together with the tornado, with the Fuller's Earth being blown up and also down, and how it actually projects forward. And unfortunately, we're almost out of time here, but don't forget, we've got the Judy Room, wonderful information. We've got,
Looks like we came a long way for nothing.
no, Scarecrow, we didn't come a long way for nothing. So what we're going to do, with Erica and Colin's permission, is we're going to give away a copy of The Wizard of MGM, just for you.
Yay.
And to do this, we're going to ask a question that was revealed in Scott and my presentation. So the first one to answer, the correct answer, not the first one to answer, the correct answer will win. Because we know you all just put an answer there, okay? Scott, what's our question of the day?
Do you want me to type it in the chat or?
Go ahead and read it out.
I'll do both. Okay, so who was the second director of the film?
Kukor.
I knew it. I knew.
Look at that. Oh,
I didn't want it to be too easy, but I don't want it to be too difficult either.
Yeah, we didn't want, we were going to come up with some obscure question.
Yeah, like
the next thing would be, what was the shoe size or something like that? But we thought that was a little intimate. But so with that, Kukor, so let's see. Erica, could you help me grab the person? And maybe we can contact Scott. Andrew Hutchins is the winner.
Yay, Scott. Yeah, so I knew somebody would pop in.
Okay. And so we'll contact Scott to get back to you. Thank you very much for playing. So with that, thank you very, very much. We know that this time went by. I'm not sure who wrote on here, but somebody was very happy. We appreciate that. Scott, any final words?
I just want to thank everyone so much for inviting me, and I hope I added, some fun stuff. Like I said, I've never given this presentation before, but it was a lot of fun. I have really had a great time, and I'm going to stick around for a little while for the next segment, whatever it is. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. And Robert.
Thank you. Oh, thank you both. So when Robert approached me about doing this, I was like, I'll have Robert anytime. But at the same time, it's like, he's done something similar at OSCON before, but no, this is Robert. So he has to go extra and bring Scott along. Scott, that was fabulous. That was really, really great. Really enjoyed that. I'm sure everybody else did as well. So
that was really interesting.
It's, again, every time I watch the movie, and even though I've seen your presentation, Robert, and I've read the book, I just always think it's just one big, massive set, and it really isn't. And I need to go back on my 4K Blu-ray and really look at the detail, because evidently I've been fooled for most of my life. So thank you so much, guys. That was great. And well done, Scott Hutchinson.
It was fantastic.
Cheers.